The moment my brother slid that document across the conference table and told me to sign it, I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. And then I looked at the attorney sitting at the head of the table, who had gone very, very still. That was the moment I realized I had won before the meeting even started. But let me back up, because none of this makes sense without understanding what my husband built and what my brother decided it meant for him. My husband passed away 14 months before that meeting. Pancreatic cancer. He was diagnosed in February and gone by August, and I spent those 6 months doing everything I could to make sure his last months felt like living and not like waiting. We didn't have children. We had each other, a house in suburban Ohio we'd spent 8 years renovating room by room, and a small logistics company he'd started in his late 20s that had grown, quietly and steadily, into something worth real money. Not tech billionaire money, but the kind of money that changes the shape of your life if it lands in the right hands, or ruins everything if it doesn't. His name was Lawrence. I called him Ren. We met at a graduate school orientation of all places. He was getting his MBA, I was finishing a master's in accounting. He used to say I was the only person he'd ever met who actually read the fine print on things voluntarily. I took it as a compliment. He meant it as one. Before he died, we spent a lot of time with his attorney updating everything. The will, the business succession documents, the beneficiary designations on every account, every policy, every asset. Ren was methodical about it in a way that broke my heart because I understood what the methodicalness meant. He wasn't being morbid. He was being protective. He knew what his family was like. My brother-in-law, Ren's younger brother, had been involved in the business in a peripheral way for years. Ren had given him a sales role about 4 years earlier, partly out of loyalty, partly because he genuinely believed his brother had potential he hadn't tapped yet. What his brother had tapped, as it turned out, was a talent for telling people what they wanted to hear and a deep, enduring resentment toward anyone who had more than him. His name was Darnell. I will use his name because he has earned it being used. After Ren died, Darnell was pleasant to me for approximately 3 weeks. He came to the funeral. He said the right things. He hugged me in the church parking lot and told me Ren would have been proud of how I was holding it together. Then the attorney read the will. Darnell inherited a small cash bequest, the same as Ren's parents and his aunt. The company Ren had spent 12 years building passed to me along with the house, the investment accounts, and a life insurance policy that I will not specify the amount of, except to say that Ren had taken it out when the company started growing and had never reduced the coverage. He was not a flashy man. He was a thorough one. I watched Darnell's face during the reading. I had never seen a person go so still while clearly vibrating with something they were working hard not to say out loud. He didn't say it that day. He waited 6 days. Then he called me and told me, very calmly, that the will had been written under circumstances that he believed reflected undue influence, meaning he was suggesting that I had manipulated his dying brother into leaving everything to me. He used the phrase, "we believe," several times, which told me this wasn't just Darnell talking. This was Darnell and his parents and possibly his wife, who had never liked me from the start, and had made that clear in the small, deniable ways that people do when they want you to feel unwelcome, but can't be accused of anything specific. I told him I understood his grief, and that I would have my attorney reach out. Then I hung up and sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Here's what I want to explain because I think it matters. I was not naive about what was coming. I had been an accountant for 9 years. I had seen the inside of more estate disputes, business partnerships gone wrong, and family financial implosions than most people encounter in a lifetime. I knew that grief does strange things to people. I also knew that greed does stranger things, and that the two together produce a specific kind of behavior that looks like pain from the outside but is mostly about inventory, who got what, who deserved more, and who can be pressured into giving some of it back. I had also, because I am the kind of person I am, spent the weeks after Ren's diagnosis quietly making sure that every document was in order, witnessed correctly, dated accurately, and stored in multiple locations. I had video of Ren, filmed on his phone with his attorney present, explaining in his own words and in complete sentences what he wanted and why. He had done it voluntarily. He had even made a small joke about how thorough I was, and the attorney had laughed, and it was all on camera. I had been Ren's wife for 11 years. I had also, without planning to, become his archivist. Darnell filed a will contest 3 months after the funeral. His parents joined as co-petitioners. The grounds were undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity, meaning they were claiming Ren either hadn't understood what he was signing or had been manipulated into signing it. My attorney responded, and we entered the part of the story that is mostly waiting in paperwork, which I will compress because it is not the interesting part. The interesting part happened at the mediation. Mediation in estate disputes is common in Ohio. Both sides agree to meet with a neutral mediator and attempt to reach a settlement before going to full litigation. It is, in theory, a chance to resolve things without a judge. In practice, it is often a chance for the party with the weaker case to see if they can pressure the other side into giving them something just to make the whole thing stop. I had agreed to mediation because my attorney advised it was the correct procedural step. I had not agreed to it because I intended to give Darnell anything. We met at a law office downtown, neutral ground. The conference room was on the 14th floor with a view of the city that Ren would have liked. There was a long table, water glasses, a plate of cookies that no one touched. Darnell sat across from me with his attorney. His parents sat beside him. His mother had not looked at me since I walked in. The mediator opened by explaining the process. Then Darnell's attorney began outlining their position, the undue influence claim, the assertion that Ren had been, in their framing, not himself during the final months due to pain medication, the suggestion that I had isolated him from his family. I sat and listened. My attorney sat beside me and took notes. When they finished, my attorney laid out our response. The video recording, the attorney's contemporaneous notes documenting Ren's state of mind at every signing, the medical records confirming that Ren's pain management had been carefully monitored and that his cognition had remained intact throughout his illness, something his own oncologist had noted in writing because Ren had specifically asked her to. Then my attorney slid a second document across the table. It was a forensic accounting report. I had hired a forensic accountant 8 months earlier, not because I suspected anything specific, but because I am an accountant, and when a will is contested and a business is involved, you check the books. You always check the books. What the forensic accountant had found was that over the previous 3 years, Darnell had been submitting expense reports that did not correspond to any legitimate business activity. The amounts individually were small enough to avoid triggering automatic review. Cumulatively, they were not small. There were also 2 vendor payments to a company that did not appear to exist in any state business registry, both authorized under a delegated approval Ren had granted Darnell for routine operational expenses. The total was a number I will not specify, except to say that it was enough to constitute felony theft in the state of Ohio. I had not filed a police report yet. The room went quiet in a way that I remember very clearly. Not the polite quiet of people listening, the specific quiet of people who have just understood something. Darnell looked at the report. Then he looked at me. His expression went through several things very quickly. Surprise, calculation, something that might have been shame, but landed closer to anger. His mother said quietly, "What is this?" My attorney explained what it was. Darnell's attorney asked for a recess. We took a 15-minute break. I went to the restroom and stood at the sink for a moment and thought about Ren, who had trusted his brother with a job and a paycheck and a measure of dignity, and who had never known that his brother had been stealing from him while he was alive. When we came back to the table, the tone had changed completely. What Darnell's attorney proposed after the recess was a full withdrawal of the will contest in exchange for my agreement not to pursue the theft matter through criminal or civil channels. No admission of wrongdoing. A mutual release. My attorney looked at me. I had thought about this moment. Not obsessively, but I had thought about it. I had considered what Ren would have wanted. Ren was not a vindictive person. But he was a fair one, and he believed, genuinely, that people should be accountable for what they do. He used to say that letting someone off the hook isn't mercy. It's just postponing the lesson. I said no. Not loudly, not dramatically. I said it the way you say it when you have already decided and you are simply communicating the decision. I told Darnell's attorney that I would withdraw from mediation and proceed to litigation, at which point the forensic accounting report would become part of the public record. I also told her that I would be filing a report with the appropriate authorities regardless of the outcome of the estate matter because the theft had occurred against a business that I now owned and it was my legal obligation as the owner to report it. Darnell said my name. Just my name, like a question. I looked at him directly. I had known this man for 11 years. I had sat across from him at holiday dinners. I had watched him give a toast at our wedding that made Wren laugh. I had believed for most of those years that whatever his faults, he was fundamentally someone who loved his brother. I said, "You stole from him while he was dying." His mother started to say something. My attorney held up a hand, not rudely, just firmly, and said that we were done for the day. We left. The will contest was withdrawn formally 11 days later. The criminal matter took longer. I filed the report as I had said I would. The county prosecutor's office reviewed the forensic accounting and opened an investigation. Darnell was eventually charged with felony theft and telecommunications fraud for the false bender scheme. His attorney negotiated a plea. He received a suspended sentence, probation, restitution, and a permanent bar from serving as an officer or director of any company in the state. His parents did not contact me again after the mediation. I don't know what they believe now. I don't spend time trying to figure it out. The business is doing well. I brought in an experienced operations manager 6 months after Wren's death and have been involved at the ownership and strategic level, which suits my background. The house is still the house Wren and I spent 8 years putting ourselves into, room by room, weekend by weekend, arguing pleasantly about paint colors and tile samples, and whether the back porch really needed to be that big. It did, by the way. The back porch. We were right to make it that big. I am 34 years old. I am a widow. I am the sole owner of a company my husband built, and I run it with the same methodical attention to detail that he always said was one of my better qualities, even when it made me a little exhausting to live with. People ask me sometimes whether I feel guilty about how things ended with Darnell. Whether I should have found a way to settle, to keep the peace, to protect what was left of the family Wren had come from. I think about Wren answering that question. I think about what he would say. He would say that protecting people who harm you is not loyalty. It is just a more comfortable form of surrender. He said something like that to me once, early in our marriage, about something small and unrelated, and I had written it off as one of his philosophical tangents. He had a lot of those. I understand it better now. The forensic accountant I hired sent me a card after the case was resolved, handwritten, which surprised me. It said that in 20 years of doing this work, she rarely saw someone as prepared as I was going into a process like that, and that whoever had taught me to read the fine print had done the world a favor. I kept the card. I keep a lot of things. I've thought a lot about what made the difference, not just in the mediation room, but in the whole long stretch of months that led up to it. It wasn't luck. It wasn't even the forensic accountant, as valuable as her work was. It was something quieter than that. It was the decision, made years before any of this happened, to pay attention, to read the documents, to understand what things actually meant instead of trusting that someone else would handle it. Wren used to tease me about that. He'd come home to find me reading the fine print on something completely mundane, a lease renewal, a contractor agreement, and he'd shake his head and smile and say I was the only person he'd ever met who genuinely enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it, exactly. I just believed that understanding what you signed is a form of respect for yourself. And it turns out that belief, practiced quietly over years, becomes something you can stand on when the ground shifts. Darnell counted on me not knowing. That's the thing I keep coming back to. He filed that contest because he believed that grief would make me soft, that being a widow would make me manageable, that I wouldn't have the stomach for a fight. He had watched me at holiday dinners and family gatherings for 11 years and decided I was the kind of person who accommodates. And I had been, in small ways, the ways you are when you love someone and want their family to feel welcome. But accommodating people you care about and surrendering to people who are trying to take from you are two completely different things, and confusing them is how people get taken. What I learned, what I lived, is that doing the right thing doesn't protect you from being challenged. It just means you have something real to stand on when the challenge comes. I could sit in that conference room and not flinch because I hadn't cut any corners. Not when we updated the documents. Not when I hired the accountant. Not when I filed the report, even when a part of me would have found it easier to take the settlement and close the door on all of it. Easy and right are rarely the same thing, and I had learned, mostly from watching Ren build something from nothing over 12 years, that the people who last are the ones who don't compromise on the foundational things, even when it costs them in the short term. There is also this. Staying standing when everyone in the room is expecting you to fold takes something you can't fake. It's not toughness exactly. I don't think of myself as a particularly tough person. It's more like clarity. Knowing what you're there for, knowing what belongs to you and why, and being willing to say so plainly even when the air in the room is hostile, and the people across the table from you are people you once shared meals with. I'm 34. I have a lot of years ahead of me where hard things will happen, and I'll have to decide what kind of person I want to be inside of them. I hope I remember the back porch. The way Ren and I argued about the size of it, and we're both right. The way he believed, quietly and consistently, that paying attention was its own form of integrity. The forensic accountant's handwritten card is still on my desk. I don't keep it as a trophy. I keep it as a reminder that preparation is not paranoia. It's care. It's the thing you do for yourself and the people you love so that when someone tries to rewrite the story, you already have the receipts.